Hey everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of Twisted Metal Season 1, I've got you covered. Just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. It'll take you right to it. Now we'll start off Season 2 with Quiet linking up with John's sister, aka Dollface, and her crew. And Dollface's whole mission is to disrupt the milkmen and make life a living hell for the insiders, and she is very, very good at it. One of the ways she does this is by attacking medical supplies. Because if the insiders can't get medical, well, you need your medicine. After one such hit, which was a big success and a large part of it was thanks to Quiet, Dollface announces that her next attempt at disrupting life is going to be to take down the wall of a major, major city and make those insiders see what life on the outside is like. But for Quiet, she's not a big fan of that idea. She's worried that a plan like this is not only going to cost the group valuable supplies, but also probably a few of the members. Because taking on a major, major city, you're going to have casualties. But for Dollface, it's like a horse with blinders. She's not really listening to it. She's just focused on getting the job done. And speaking of focus, that's pretty much what John has been up to. Focusing on training for Calypso's big competition, although it's not because he wants to win, it's because he's being forced to train. He's being forced to train by the new Raven. The old Raven seems to have been reassigned, and this new Raven is way more cutthroat. She's not as lenient on John as the Alpha Raven, as she calls her, and she doesn't take any shit. She's so concerned with John fleeing New San Francisco that she has him tailed and followed as he does his day job, a pizza delivery guy, to make sure that he will come back and train. Training on a video game. You might have heard of it. One of them's called Twisted Metal. It's weird, though. They don't have him training with Cruisin' USA. Like, that's a classic. Anyway, I'll digress. And because of all of this, John has no problem letting the new Raven know, yeah, I'm not a real big fan of you. Where's the old one? She was cool. And she has no problem reminding John, yeah, if you try to escape, you'll still be in my grasp. If you feel joy, it's because I want you to feel joy. And she punishes him by doing the worst thing imaginable, taking away his DVDs. With John now confined to his childhood home without his DVD collection, he is bored out of his mind. He's got nothing to do. So he turns to the one logical thing that you, I, and everybody with a brain cell would turn to, the Babysitter's Club, the classic book series from the 80s and 90s. His sister had the entire collection, and John breezes through them. He loves them. He can't get enough. The problem is, when he finishes book 88, the next book he has available is book 90. He's missing book 89. And that is a huge issue, because in 90, they introduce a whole new girl to the Babysitter's Club, and he needs to find out her backstory. So he goes searching the house for book 89, and that forces him to go into his childhood bedroom, which he shared with his sister. Now, John hadn't been in that childhood bedroom since he moved back in the house. It just had too many scars. But the Babysitter's Club, that was enough motivation for him to finally open the door. Now, the good news is he does end up finding book 89. The bad news is his sister hollowed it out and put weed and a cigarette in there, so he's not going to get the backstory anyway. But as he's lighting up that joint, he notices his sister's diary, and he starts skimming through it because, hey, maybe that's good reading. And what he finds out is his family had a cabin, and she actually drew a map. It's not a great map, but it's a map nonetheless. That's not the only map she drew, though. She also drew a map of the sewer system, because when he was a kid, John loved the Ninja Turtles. He was obsessed with them. And obviously the Ninja Turtles, they live in the sewer. He wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. So she, trying to be a good big sister, drew him a map. And that gave him a great idea on how he's going to escape. He heads downstairs and he writes a note for one of the security guards named Chester to meet him in the bathroom. And when Chester does, he finds John is showering. But that's by design. John is showering because he doesn't want Raven to overhear the conversation that he wants to have with Chester. That's how paranoid he is. And he forces the security guard into the shower with him. John doesn't seem to be clothed. The security guard fully is, so get your head out of the gutter. He tells Chester all about the sewer system, all about this map that he has and how the sewer system leads to the bay. It's an easy way to escape. Chester doesn't really want to break the rules, but John is pretty convincing, and the two formulate a plan involving Chester, who's a pretty big guy, swapping uniforms with John. I mean, Chester looks absolutely ridiculous. But the sewer system thing was all a bait and switch. He tells a few other security guards, along with Raven, that John is planning to escape through the sewer system as John, dressed up in Chester's security outfit, heads back into the warehouse where he usually trains, Raven is located, and more importantly, the garage with all the cars is. At first, he comes across a car that he thinks is Evelyn, but when he pulls the tarp off, it's not, although it is a really, really good-looking car, and it is pretty clear that it is ready for battle. Then John sees the car that he's actually going to use to escape. It's an ambulance. Although when he opens up the back of it, he is shocked to find that there is somebody in there. John actually has a pretty good idea of who she is because Raven let it slip. Her name is Kelly, and all John knows is that Raven cares for her a lot, but the backstory is actually sad. Raven and Kelly were girlfriends back in high school in 1998. Raven was this goth chick, and Kelly was kind of her Robin to the Batman. At a graduation party one night, Raven was just screwing with kids using tarot cards, trying to scare them. Kelly was assisting, but when she went up on the roof, she fell, hit her head, and now she's a vegetable, essentially, being kept alive in this ambulance. And Calypso's prize for the competition, Anything Your Heart's Desire, is the motivating factor for Raven to make John work as hard as possible in training. Again, though, John doesn't know all of this backstory. He just sees a body on a gurney being attached to stuff, and he's deciding what to do with it, when all of a sudden there is an announcement, and all of the TVs turn on simultaneously. And it's not just in the building that John's in, it's everywhere. So, Dollface and her group are seeing it. Even Sweet Tooth and Stu get the memo. And of course, Raven is locked in on the broadcast. And the broadcast is from Calypso, alerting everybody to the fact that the competition will start in 1 week. He reminds everybody that the prize for winning this competition is whatever you want, and then he gives the coordinates. For John, he's not planning on being a part of the competition. He just wants to get the hell out of New San Francisco. So he takes Kelly's body out of the ambulance, and he goes to escape. And just a few minutes after Calypso's message goes off the air, Raven is alerted to the fact that the ambulance has escaped and John is in it. But when she hears that an ambulance has escaped, she panics, knowing full well that Kelly's body was in that ambulance. She's pretty relieved when she runs downstairs to find that Kelly isn't in that ambulance anymore. John actually looked out for her. Because of this, though, John is able to successfully escape New San Francisco, and he's on the road. As for Dollface and her group, when they got the message, they were torn on what to do, entering the competition or not. And it's Quiet who convinces the group, guys, we have to enter this competition. I mean, if we go up against a major city trying to take down a wall, we are going to lose resources and manpower. But if we win this competition, we can take down all of the walls. And for most of the group, they seem to be on board with this logic. It does make sense. But then they get alert about an ambulance on the road from New San Francisco, and they go to pick it up. Dollface and her group feel like it's just another medical run, not realizing that John is actually behind the wheel. Although they aren't the only people after this ambulance. After Raven found out that John escaped, she sent 2 men, and they were hot on John's ass. And in an ironic twist, John is only saved because Dollface and her group took out the 2 security guards from New San Francisco because they wanted the ambulance all to themselves. And it doesn't take long before they're able to knock it off the road. John is able to get out of the ambulance. He seems okay until Quiet ends up shooting him in the shoulder. Again. And he's pretty pissed off about it. He's even more pissed off when he finds out that it was Quiet. But Quiet, John, they're both relieved to at least be back in the vicinity because that's all John cared about. One of the main reasons he wanted to escape New San Francisco was to find Quiet. Now he's done it. But then Dollface walks over, shocked. She pulls up her mask and she says, "Is that you? Lionel?" And John, being very confused, says, "Who the hell's Lionel?" He doesn't even know that that's his name. And then John's knocked out by another girl who had no idea what the hell was going on and still thought they were after these medical supplies. Context clues aren't really her thing. Back to Sweet Tooth, though, he also will be entering the competition. He had plans on forming his own competition, bringing all of the deadliest bad guys, if you will, into one area where he would take them all out. But Calypso's competition, it makes more sense. In episode 2, John wakes up in the camp of the dolls, and at first he's greeted by this one doll that just wants to torture him. It's actually the doll that knocked him out in the first place. Her name's Ashley, but he's saved when Quiet and Dollface, whose real name, by the way, is Krista, walk into the tent. And at first, all John cares about is seeing Quiet. She was the whole motivating factor for getting out of New San Francisco, and he is thrilled to be reunited with her. But she has to remind him, John, I'm happy to see you too, but I'm not the only one. Here's your sister. And Krista has waited for this moment for so long. I mean, John has waited to be reunited with Quiet for 7 months. Krista's been waiting to be reunited with her brother for years, decades, and now she finally is. Unfortunately, John doesn't really care. It's super awkward. I mean, they share an awkward hug, but it's obvious that John doesn't really know how to react. He does, though, ask, hey, what's up with the masks and all of this? And she explains that the dolls are a group that she created, and they even the playing field because the insiders are thriving while the outsiders are struggling. So their whole mission is to just even it up. The reality, though, is that Krista met the founding members of the dolls at a get-together that her boyfriend was a part of. And first, Krista shows up, she sits down, and she finds out real quickly that women aren't allowed to participate. They're banished to the bathroom. And when Krista got to the bathroom, what she found out was that the women were actually the ones making the deals, while the men were outside doing a dick measuring contest. I'm not even kidding about that. They literally would get together and measure it, which, after puberty, it's done growing. I mean, there's no... Anyway, she talked all the girls into the fact that they don't really need the guys anymore. They can do this on their own. So they all walked out of the bathroom and they made it known. We're leaving all of you and we're taking your product. And then they started killing the guys once there was a little bit of pushback. But that was the formation of the dolls, and it has expanded and grown, and now they're a quasi-women army. Krista explains all of this as they walk over to the clothing tent so that John can get a new outfit. It is a bit awkward for John after he puts on the new fit, and it seems like he interrupts a conversation between Quiet and the girl that Quiet's hooking up with. John obviously wanting a relationship with her still. As he continues to try on some more stuff, Krista tries to converse with him and learn about what he's been up to, but he doesn't really have great answers. He basically tells her, yeah, I've been milkmanning. That's about it. Krista's kind of surprised at John's lackadaisical approach to all this, and when she gets called away, Quiet has to ask John, are you serious right now? Like, that's your sister. What the hell's wrong with you? And John admits that he thought he would feel some certain way, but he just doesn't because he doesn't know her. And to make matters worse, she remembers more about their past than he does. To change the subject, though, Quiet says, hey, come on, I want to show you something that you'll definitely remember. And it's John's old car, although she's made some modifications to it. She's calling the car Roadkill now, and it is prepped for battle. After looking over all the changes that he did, he remembers that he hasn't told Quiet the most exciting thing, the family cabin. He pitches her on going to the cabin, living a life there. Just the two of them, escaping all of this, escaping the danger. But Quiet tells him, John, that sounds great, but I can't. I'm planning on entering the tournament. And John is floored. He can't believe that she's willing to enter the tournament and put her life at risk, but she's going to, and it sparks a pretty big argument between the two. John just wanting to protect her, but Quiet telling him, John, you don't even know me, and walking off. As she exits, though, she sees something a little bit surprising. It's a new member of the dolls, at least somebody she doesn't recognize. It's a girl who appears to be trying to steal a car. And when she approaches the girl plays it off like she's a part of the dolls, but Quiet knows better. She knows everybody in the group, and she knows that this girl is not a part of it. And this mystery girl had infiltrated their camp, stolen a bunch of goods, and was trying to get away. But she was obviously caught by Quiet, who decided, I'm going to tie you to a tree, I'm going to give you a hatchet, and you can figure out the rest. The girl, though, goes by the name Mayhem. And yes, it was a self-given nickname, which are always the best kind. She looks to be maybe 20 years old, and she also seems to be a pathological liar, but now she's stuck to a tree. As Quiet was apprehending the thief, John went to go speak to his sister because If he wasn't going to get through to Quiet, he thought he might be able to get through to Krista. He tries to convince Krista to not let Quiet enter the race. And she says, first of all, we haven't decided who's going to represent our team, but yeah, she's a candidate. And second of all, you're not going to tell me what to do. And third of all, you're not going to tell her what to do. If she wants to enter the race, John, she's going to enter the race. Krista, though, then shakes her head and says, I can't believe you. I mean, after all these years, you haven't even asked what happened to our parents. And John says, well, is it a good story or is it a bad story? And he can tell by Krista's face that it's a bad story, so he doesn't want to hear it. She then leaves the tent and she calls all the dolls together to make an announcement about the upcoming tournament. They're going to hold their own race to figure out who will represent the dolls. Anybody that wants to enter can enter. Obviously, Quiet is the first one to enter. She's the most logical choice. She's the best driver out of everybody. But you do have some other people enter. Other girls enter. And when John tries to enter, he's told, oh, you can't enter, you're not a doll. And that's when Mayhem, who is pretty far away but can overhear the conversation, starts laughing and saying, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not a doll either, but it just sounds like you might be a little worried that you're going to get beat by a guy. Obviously, none of them are worried about that, but she does have a point. So Krista is going to let the guys, there's another guy named Jeremy, she's going to let them enter the race as well. It doesn't take long for John and Quiet to be the only two left, and it seems like John is about to edge Quiet in this race, but then Quiet shows the modification she made to Roadkill by pressing one button, pulling a Fast and the Furious, and blowing right by John across the finish line, winning the race. Although she can't really handle that power, and she crashes her car. And as soon as John crosses the finish line, he goes to check on her, but Quiet tells him, John, I don't need your help. She leaves John pretty puzzled as to what to do next. She then notices that Mayhem is gone, and she doesn't really care about not finding Mayhem. She wants her hatchet back. So she starts walking around the woods to try to find this girl, and John decides to go along with her. And it doesn't take long for them to find Mayhem chained up to another tree. And Mayhem says, guys, you got to get out of here. And that's because Mayhem was taken by cave people who had a gripe with her. And when these cave people heard Quiet and John coming, they hid, and then they ambushed them. And Quiet tries to make it clear to these people, look, I don't care what you do with the girl, I just want my hatchet back, but they're cave people, they don't really understand. A fight ensues, and that's when you see that the chemistry between Quiet and John is still there. They kill all of them, and they even surprise themselves because 7 months off, they haven't really skipped a beat. After this, though, Quiet drags Mayhem back to camp, and she tells her, you're staying with the dolls, because you're not going to survive out there on your own. And Mayhem isn't a really big fan of that idea, but it doesn't seem like she has a great other option. Meanwhile, John went to just have a think near a pond because he doesn't really know what to do next, and that's when Krista walks up. She can tell what's bothering John. She heard about what happened in the woods, and she says, hey, it's got to suck. You get reunited with somebody that you've been wanting to reunite with for so long, only to find out they're a completely different person. Huh. Yeah, I wish I could relate. She then tells John that even though he doesn't agree with their mission, the walls are what killed their parents, so he should get on board. And as for Quiet, no matter how hard John tries, he's not going to be able to change her mind. So his sister's advice to him is, be there for her, support her. And after thinking on it, John decides, you know what, she's right. He goes over to Quiet, who is gearing up to leave for the race. She won't be the only one. She's going to have an escort to make sure that she arrives at the coordinates safely. But John tells her, it's pretty clear you don't need me, and I wish you all the best. But it turns out Quiet does need him, because she's decided that what happened in the woods needs to continue. They do make a good team, and she wants John to come along with her and ride shotgun. If she's going to win this race, she wants John by her side, and John is more than happy to oblige to that. But Kristen knows that Roadkill will need upgrades, big upgrades, and she tells them, before you enter this race, you need to go get those upgrades in Diesel City. We also get introduced to another person who will be entering the race. It's a guy named Mr. Grimm, who was in an insane asylum, but somebody freed him because they really want him to enter, and he is more than happy to pick up his helmet and ride away from that place. In episode 3, Quiet and John take off, and at first, they're getting along great because they're catching up. Quiet is telling John all about what she was up to in the 7 months where they weren't together when she was just a doll. But eventually, the conversation does get to John and his sister and the awkwardness of their relationship. And John's like, look, I just don't know what to say to her. So Quiet tricks him. She makes him think that there's something wrong with roadkill. She pulls off to the side of the road, and as soon as John gets out, she locks the door and says, "Go talk to your sister," because Krista is in the car behind them. And about 3 seconds later, Krista pulls up, she kicks Ashley out of the car, and her and John take off. Now, as for Quiet, she's finally got the car to herself, which means that she can jam out to some all-time bangers. I'm talking Michelle Branch, Everywhere to Me. It's a classic. But as she's singing it, she hears somebody scream from the trunk, "Can you please shut up?" And that person is Mayhem. Mayhem had snuck into the trunk of Roadkill, and she just couldn't take Quiet's horrible singing anymore, so she made it known that she was in the trunk. And at first, you can imagine, Quiet's pretty pissed off. She left this girl with the dolls, expecting her to be with the dolls, but Mayhem seemed to have other ideas. And she tells Quiet, "You don't realize I'm the best driver out here." And yeah, Quiet has a hard time believing that. Really hard time. It also doesn't help with the fact that Mayhem seems to be a pathological liar, so Quiet decides to put her to the test. She takes her to an abandoned parking lot and lets her drive Roadkill. And Mayhem is all talk. I mean, big game. But when it comes to actually driving the vehicle, she can't. She doesn't really know how to drive stick. But this girl has some balls on her because she tries to pull on Quiet what Quiet pulled on John. As soon as Quiet gets out of the car, Mayhem tries to take off, but the fact that she can't drive the vehicle stops her from doing that. Now, it's at this point that you'd imagine maybe Quiet would just have enough of Mayhem, kick her out of the car for good, and take off, leaving her, but there's something about this girl that Quiet latches onto. Maybe she sees herself in her. Either way, instead of kicking her to the curb, she decides to actually teach her how to drive. But the fact that Mayhem spoke so highly of her skills had Quiet give Mayhem a little bit of tough love. I mean, she puts her through the ringer. She's got a gun to her head. She's yelling at her. And it gets to the point where Quiet can't take it anymore, and she screams back at her and actually gets out of the vehicle and gets back in the trunk. That's how frazzled Quiet had her. Eventually, Quiet kind of apologizes to Mayhem. She does feel bad about how she treated her. She tells her a story about how her brother taught her, and even though he wasn't the best teacher, he did keep her alive. But then Quiet asks her, "Why do you want to enter this tournament? It is to the death." And Mayhem tells her, "I'm not scared of dying, but if I win this thing, I can wish for a better life." And that's something that Quiet can respect, so she tells her, "All right, get in the front seat. Let's try again." As for John and Krista, they were following Quiet, but Krista decided to make a detour. They were about to pass a place that Krista was very familiar with because their dad took her and John there all the time when they were a kid. It is a drive-in movie theater. Now, it's run down and it seems to be abandoned, but for Krista, it's a nice trip down memory lane, and she's hoping that maybe it'll jog some memories for John. Now, when they get there, John wants no parts in the movie theater. He sees red flags all over the place. He doesn't want to head in, but Krista kind of bullies him into heading in. And one of the things that they don't even notice, but will end up playing a big part of this, is the fact that the movie that's being projected is called Grimm's Dark Trip Back. Little do they know that that movie's about to become a reality. The two, however, head in. They find an abandoned vehicle. They get in. Krista starts acting like there is a movie playing, although the power is not on. And then she pulls out a joint that the two can smoke as Krista tells him about some memories, hoping to jog his own. She starts telling him what he would do when he came to the drive-thru as a kid. They start talking about the house a little bit. But eventually, this morphs into a fight between the two. John frustrated because life hasn't been easy for him, not remembering. Krista frustrated because John can't remember. And then the two get easily distracted because somebody starts shooting at them. And now they need to hide. As the two are trying to get behind some cover, they see that the person that was opening fire is a man that seems to be connected to two giant wheels coming out of the fire. It doesn't look normal at all. As they're trying to make their way from car to car, John decides to shoot at this guy whose name is Axel, but Krista accidentally gets hit pretty good in the face with a shard of glass and she's cut. They do find a hiding spot, and it seems like Axel has given up on searching for him because he actually is able to get off of the two wheels, and he just starts downing some gasoline. And that gives John and Krista enough time to patch her up. one of the issues they have is they can't escape because there's some sound wave thing that is actually keeping them in. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get inside and cut the power. They get inside, they start looking around for whatever is controlling the power, and that is when Krista is attacked by the mad scientist who made Axel a vehicle. He's got Krista at knife point, and he's threatening to kill her, but both John and Krista team up, and they throw this little weasel out the window. He lands on a pipe, and he dies instantly. That's going to allow Krista and John to put on the power, but before they do that, John makes it clear to Axel, hey, we just killed that mad scientist guy. Like, you're free to go. And Axel's all for that. He actually thanks them, and then he heads off. It's not too long later that Krista and John do the same thing. But Krista and John won't be the only people that run into Axel, because not too far away, as Quiet is teaching Mayhem how to drive, they get an unexpected visitor. It's Jeremy. Jeremy and Ashley were hooking up in the car, and they were attacked by Mr. Grimm, who got out of the asylum, and the first place he headed was to the graveyard to pick up his father's bike. But the thing about Mr. Grimm is when he kills somebody, it seems like he's able to take the person's soul. We don't know if he took Ashley's soul, but Jeremy was left alive, and he's running towards both Quiet and Mayhem, warning them, hey, this guy's coming, and then they see, oh, there's some guy on a bicycle. Oh, he just killed Jeremy. And now they're freaking out a little bit. That 45 minutes of training with Quiet needs to pay off quickly as they try to escape. And they are able to do that, but only because Axel comes out of nowhere and he starts fighting Mr. Grimm. That allows both Mayhem and Quiet to escape easily and leave those two to hash out their differences. A little while later, Mayhem and Quiet link up with John and Krista, who seem to be doing way better in their relationship, although they are super high. And when they let John and Krista know about this guy on the bike and then this dude on two massive wheels connected to it, Krista and John excitedly say, oh, Axel, as if they're old friends with the guy. The good news is they're just on the outskirts of Diesel City. But before they head there, Krista needs to say goodbye to Ashley and Jeremy. They weren't the best soldiers, but they were dolls nonetheless. One thing she doesn't do, though, is she doesn't bury Ashley's doll mask. And when Mayhem asks Quiet about it, Quiet explains it's just going to go to the next person who deserves to be a doll. To which Mayhem says, okay, well, when you go down, I'll keep your mask alive. They joke around a little bit more, but then they get back to the task at hand. The fact that they're on the outskirts of Diesel City, and this is where they will load up the vehicles. In episode 4, the group arrives at Diesel City, but getting these weapons is not going to be easy. Unlike most places, Diesel City has a no-tolerance policy for violence, and they've gone so far as to have snipers armed and ready to take out anybody who breaks the cardinal rule. Obviously, if they have a no-tolerance policy for violence, they also have it for stealing, and that's what Krista and her group are planning on doing. They're not going to buy these weapons, they're going to steal them. The way that Diesel City works is you basically sell your gasoline and get an in-house currency. And in the marketplace, there's a ton of weapons, but Krista, she's after the big weapons. And those weapons are deep in the Emperor's inner sanctum. The Emperor is basically the mayor of Diesel City. And the kind of weapons that Krista is after are complete game changers. Now, here's the tricky part, getting into the vault. The way you get into the vault is by going up to an office all the way in the rafters and clicking a button. But after doing that, you're going to need somebody to actually go into the vault. And the only people that are going to be able to get close to it are the representatives from other cities. They're kind of the bigwigs. So Chris's plan is to be the one to hit the button that opens up the vault. But that's going to leave John and Quiet to try to blend in with the other representatives, bide their time, find their way to the vault, and just wait for the door to open. And when it does, they go in and they're going to steal the weapons. Mayhem, meanwhile, she's going to wait on the outside just in case things go south and they need a getaway driver. John and Quiet, though, are not going to be able to go in as quote-unquote representatives dressed the way they are. They have to change into some outfits, and when Quiet comes out of the car, all changed in a sexy pantsuit, John is turned on. John, Quiet, and Krista then head into Diesel City. They're planning on breaking up and going their separate ways. But one of the issues that John and Quiet have is the fact that they don't have lanyards that distinguish them from others. You need a lanyard to get in with the bigwigs. As both John and Quiet survey the situation, trying to figure out how they're going to get a lanyard without causing a scene and causing violence, that's when Mayhem walks up and hands them 2 lanyards. She's already come up clutch in this mission. She poached them, and while it doesn't look exactly like Quiet and John, it's good enough to fool the guards and get them upstairs with the Emperor. For Quiet, she's a representative from Spokane, Washington, and she puts on the worst kind of accent in the world. Amazingly, though, it's fooling everybody, because apparently no one's ever met somebody from Spokane. It even fools the Emperor. I mean, shortly after Quiet and John get up and everybody's kind of just drinking and mingling, the Emperor walks up to both of them, and when he hears Quiet's accent, he hates it, but he loves it at the same time. Quiet and John, though, have a slight issue. They haven't been able to blend in like they thought, and one of the reasons why is because the lanyards that Mayhem stole, apparently, unbeknownst to them, Kirkland, the place that John's repping, and Spokane haven't had diplomatic relationships in a while. In fact, they've been basically at war with each other. So the fact that these 2 reps from rival cities are mingling at this event is virtually unheard of, and it's got a lot of eyeballs on both Quiet and John. But John and Quiet just tell them, yeah, we figured we'd make good at such a great place like Diesel City, where violence isn't tolerated. And that's something that the Emperor loves. He loves building a bridge. The Emperor seems to buy their story, though. He leaves them alone, and they continue to drink, just biding their time. Eventually, they do get a chance to look at some of these exotic weapons that Krista was talking about. There's a silent auction for all of them. There's something called ghost missiles. Then there's something called a boomerang blast. Apparently, it's a missile that comes back to you. As they're kind of making fun of that entire premise, somebody from the auction house walks up and starts pitching them on the boomerang blast. But then he turns their attention to the napalm cones. He tells them that these rockets dispense liquid napalm that will melt your skin in 7 seconds. And both Quiet and John are listening and nodding their heads, but then the auctioneer tells them that major cities like New San Francisco have been using it with great success. In fact, New San Francisco just recently used it on a bunch of outsiders, and that pisses John off. He thinks that this auctioneer is sick in the head for thinking that human life is just so cavalier. I mean, the way the guy is talking about it, it's as if these people are roaches. And it's Quiet who has to bring John back into reality and remind him, hey, we're not here to ruffle feathers. You got to calm down. But for John, it's personal. Because he knows what it was like to be on the outside. He knows that those people are just trying to survive. And then you've got this asshat who's basically just acting like they're cockroaches. John ain't for it. But he does end up getting himself together, keeping his emotions in check, and keeping the task at hand, getting into the vault. There's then an announcement from the Emperor telling everybody to wrap up the bids and they'll announce the winners after quote-unquote playtime. John and Quiet have no idea what quote-unquote playtime means, but they follow the group into another part of Diesel City, and they're greeted by a guy before they enter another room who asks them if they want to keep their pants on. And they say, yeah. But when they get in the room, they realize why that question was asked. It's a full-on sex orgy. And now John and Quiet need to figure out how they're going to maneuver this to get to the vault. Now, at this point, I have to mention that John, Quiet, Krista, Mayhem, they're not the only ones that we're familiar with that have made their way to Diesel City. So has Sweet Tooth and Stu. And they're at odds because they have a very fixed budget and they need to get weapons for the race, just like Krista and her group. But Sweet Tooth is unhinged. He wants to just waste a lot of their money, and not only that, he wants to kill. And meanwhile, you've got Stu trying to keep the budget under control while also keeping Sweet Tooth alive. It's pretty difficult. Sweet Tooth's appetite is very hungry for death. He just can't control himself. So he heads up to the catwalk and he finds a little action. That action being Krista. She had made her way up to the catwalk and she was taking out some snipers, and Sweet Tooth decided to help out. She's a little weirded out. She does thank him, but Sweet Tooth, he's just relieved that somebody knows who he is because Krista is well aware of the legend of Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth actually wants to team up with her because of this, but she doesn't want to. She just wants to get into that office, press the button, and open up the vault. While Sweet Tooth was trying to get a new partner, his old partner, Stu, was taken in by security, having no idea why he was taken in by security. But then you find out. Because as John and Quiet were trying to work their way through this orgy, they were forced to get on top of one another. The Emperor kept staring them down, and they just had to make it seem like they were really, really into each other. But in this process, they ended up getting really, really into each other. I mean, the sexual tension all rushed back, and they remembered, oh yeah, no, we've had sex before, and I'm into it. But the big distraction came when the Emperor announced that he had his guards look for the crudest, sweatiest, most pathetic yet delicious outsider he could find, and that person is Stu. Stu is then wheeled out, and he's basically sacrificed to the group. And by sacrifice, I don't mean he's killed. No, like they just use him sexually. He's really, really into it. I mean, good for Stu. But this distraction does allow Quiet and John to get away and head to the vault. The problem is they're still really horned up. When they get near the vault, though, the vault isn't opened yet. It's supposed to be open at this point. The reason why it's not open is because Sweet Tooth had followed Krista into the room where she has to press the button, and he was kind of annoying her. He clearly wanted to team up. But then they noticed that there's an electromagnetic pulse generator in the room, and they both want it because that's a game changer for the competition. Because neither of them want to give it up, they get into a fight. That delayed the process of opening up the vault for John and Quiet. In the middle of the fight, though, Krista is able to hit the button. It opens up the vault, and John and Quiet go in. And while they're supposed to grab weapons, they don't. What they end up doing is grabbing each other. They bang each other's brains out. While doing so, they end up starting a fire. You would think this would stop them? No, it doesn't stop them at all. They continue to bang each other's brains out. And they're instilled in the throes of passion so much, they don't even notice that Stu walks in and basically steals all the weapons that they were supposed to steal. The only weapon that the group gets away with is that EMP. And that's solely because Krista was saved by Mayhem, who didn't follow orders. She didn't stay by the cars. And once again, she bails the group out. The fire, though, that Quiet and John raged on so much that it caused alarms. Everybody in Diesel City had to get the hell out of there. John and Quiet were able to escape, but they did so scantily clad. Stu was also able to escape after gunning down the Emperor and all of the bigwigs. It was his first killing spree. He's really proud of himself. It's a pretty chaotic scene getting out of there, but Sweet Tooth, Stu, Quiet, Mayhem, John, Krista, they're all able to get out of there and make their way towards the tournament. That night, though, as Krista and her group make camp, Krista tells both John and Quiet that since they've started this journey, she's seen some pretty weird stuff, and what it's made her realize is the fact that they're going to need somebody to watch their back, and that's why she's also going to enter the tournament. Her plan is for Roadkill to take the lead. She sets up the EMP, hits the button, and boom, there's no competition. Seems like a pretty good plan, but Mayhem is also planning on still entering the tournament. And that tournament starts in 1 day. In episode 5, Quiet and her gang arrive at the coordinates that were given to them by Calypso to start the race. And shortly after arriving, they see some familiar faces, like Axel. Sweet Tooth eventually arrives, but there's also a bunch of people they don't know. And slowly after entering the garage, they are stared down by their competition. Everybody is eyeing everybody else up. But the group parks, they get out of their cars, and they do what everybody else does. They just start peacocking around, trying to look tough. As Quiet and John discuss how they probably should warn Mayhem on getting out of this before she, dies, John looks to his left and he sees a familiar face he doesn't want to see. It's the Holy Men. They're back. And as much as John tries to hide from these guys because he doesn't really want to deal with them, it's too late. They've seen him and they walk up to him. They recognize him as the guy who fought Preacher Jebediah last year. They start getting into it on what exactly caused the death of the preacher, whether it was John's fault or not. But one thing is clear. They're not going to come to blows, because if they do, well, you're out of the competition, so there's no point of doing that. The Holy Men are planning on taking their revenge out in the cars. They do, however, have a new leader, and that leader is all of like a foot tall. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not really good with measurements, but it's a baby. They found a baby, and they're convinced that Preacher Jebediah's soul Well, the baby's been reincarnated, essentially, and they're carrying around a child. As John and Quiet dealt with that, Krista walked around and she chatted up Axel, asking how he was doing now that he's free. And he's doing better, obviously. He appreciates what they did for him, and he tells them, I owe you one, but just one. After that, I'm going to flatten you guys on my tires. It should be noted, there's a lot of sexual tension between Axel and Krista. Krista wants some of that, and I don't blame her. Like, the guy's chiseled out of granite, and his only flaw is he drinks a lot of gasoline. But who among us doesn't have flaws, you know? And then finally, Mayhem, she walked around and actually made herself useful again. She started getting some tips on the competition. The first person she went up to is a competitor from the Florida swamplands named Vermin, and she looks like a bug. But as Vermin is trying to intimidate Mayhem, Mayhem pulls an Uno reverse. She praises Vermin on being intimidating, but says, oh yeah, you know those preacher guys over there? They don't think you're much competition at all. She's just stirring the pot, and it's not the first time she'll do this. She then walks up to the Holy Men and tells them that Sweet Tooth said that they had gotten soft. And she finds out that there's one competitor named Billy Ray Stillwell. He calls himself the Junkyard Dog. He's got an old school tow truck that has one of those balls with spikes on it. There's a name for it. I don't know what it is. Hit thumbs down. There's another guy that looks like he was ripped right out of Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift named Chucky Flute. He's super arrogant, super cocky. But the person that Mayhem actually is concerned about is a bounty hunter named Death Warrant. The guy takes scalps and then weaves the hair of his victim into his mullet. It's intense. So again, Mayhem's kind of been the MVP so far. She wasn't the only one walking around trying to get some intel on the competition. Stu was doing the same thing until he ran into an old friend. Stu runs into Mike. He is shocked, but he's also elated. I mean, this was his best friend. He's relieved that he's even alive. But then he realized he just got replaced. While both guys are mentioning how they can't believe the other one is alive, Mike's new partner, Dave, pops out, and Stu's a little surprised. Mike goes on to explain that Dave was actually a part of the Butchers. They were fattening Mike up to eat him. But Mike turned to Dave and said, a man who eats man is no man at all. I mean, it's deep, and it worked. Ever since then, Mike and Dave have been inseparable. And you can tell this actually does bother Stu. He feels like he was replaced because, well, he was. But then Mike turns the conversation to what happened with Stu, because the last time that he saw him, he was in danger of being murdered by Sweet Tooth. In fact, Mike was convinced that he was murdered by Sweet Tooth. And as Stu is trying to explain what exactly happened and how that's kind of a funny story, Sweet Tooth pops out of nowhere and shows himself. And that's when it all clicks with Mike. Oh my God, you're working with this guy. He can't believe it. Not after what Sweet Tooth did to him and also almost did to Stu. And Stu explains that it's not what it seems. They actually are partners, but you can tell Mike thinks that Stu is nothing more than Sweet Tooth's lackey. It completely changes the mood between both men, and Dave and Mike turn around and start working on their cars. And that's when the next blast from the past hits, because the next participant in the tournament arrives, and it's Mr. Grimm. And while some of the people recognize Mr. Grimm, i.e., Quiet mentions how this is the guy that killed her friends, and Axel certainly recognizes him, Sweet Tooth is the other guy that recognizes him. And Sweet Tooth can't believe that Mr. Grimm is out, because it turns out Sweet Tooth was the one that put him in that asylum. Mr. Grimm assures him that he was let go to enter this tournament, and then he reveals Sweet Tooth's actual name is Marcus, which really, really upsets Sweet Tooth. Most of the competitors, though, continue to work on their cars. Quiet goes over and has a chat with Mayhem about pissing people off, because it seems like she's kind of doing that by spreading these lies. And then the final participant arrives for the tournament. It's Raven, the new one. She had no choice. Not after John left. She has to enter the tournament on her own, and the first person she sees is John. And she's stunned. She can't believe that John fled New San Francisco and still entered the tournament. And then Quiet arrives, and it all kind of makes sense. There's a lot of empty threats, empty promises, and the typical tough guy talk. An alarm then goes off, and it signals that Calypso has arrived to explain the rules of the tournament. It takes him a while because he has the slowest hangar door and he really, really captures that sense of anticipation. But when he finally gets in front of all the competitors, he welcomes them to the contest. But he explains that what they're going to do isn't actually the contest yet. Their mission is to grab a pack and deliver it to Tournament City and survive. That's it. If you do that, you've officially qualified for his tournament and you're in. And for John and Quiet, delivering a package, this seems too easy. He then, however, gives everybody 10 seconds to arm their vehicles and get going. And everybody is able to get going, except Mayhem. Quiet was really, really worried about Mayhem, so she took something from her car's engine that wouldn't allow the car to start. She felt like this was the easiest way to keep Mayhem alive. But, in fact, that didn't actually stop Mayhem. Mayhem found another vehicle. It was pretty crappy, but she hopped in it, and she's determined to deliver that package, as is everybody else. And as all the vehicles make their way to Tournament City, they're all firing on one another. But then they get a hint at what Calypso is doing with these packages when out of nowhere, someone's package turns red, and a rocket falls from the sky and blows them up. For John, he's pretty sure that Calypso must be tracking them, and then their package goes from green to yellow. You got to figure the next step is red, and that's when they die. They, however, are in a pretty good spot. They're at the lead. But that's when everything changes. Because in the rearview mirror, Quiet sees flares go up, and she knows that that's Mayhem because Mayhem had a flare gun. And she can't believe that Mayhem has actually been able to enter the race. While she says aloud, I can't go back. I mean, she's on her own. I can't go back. John knows that Quiet is going to regret not going back and saving this girl. So even though Quiet is driving, John instructs her, go back, turn the car around. And Quiet puts up a little bit of a fight saying, no, we can't. But John says, no, we're wasting time. Turn the car around and go back. So Quiet does. She turns the car around and she heads back to save Mayhem. In episode 6, John and Quiet race back to catch up with Mayhem, and she is struggling big time. Chucky Floop is all over her, and she's trying very hard to evade him, but it's not really working. If it wasn't for Quiet and John, she probably would have died. And you would think that she would be appreciative of their help, but she's not. When Quiet tells her to drive ahead so they can watch her back, she's just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. And Quiet can't believe the reaction, but they do it anyway. I mean, they watch her back and they do save her. Quiet ends up killing the tow truck driver. They've then got to deal with Mr. Grimm, but they can't shake Mr. Grimm. So much so that John has to call for backup for Krista, and the cavalry rushes in. She's about to hit that EMP, and when she does, it malfunctions. It doesn't work. Krista now has to use her guns to get Mr. Grimm off the tail of her brother and Quiet, and it works. Mr. Grimm chills out. It seems like they both are headed for Tournament City. It seems like everything's going well until Krista gets shot right through the chest. She's not surviving this. The harpoon-like machine pulls her off her quad, and she knows she's done. But she's not going out alone. When the guys who pulled this stop to marvel at what they've done, Krista, who is still armed with her pack, shoots it, triggering the rocket from the sky and killing everybody involved. But for John and Quiet, they have no idea about this. They've made it safely to Tournament City, along with a slew of other people. The first one there was Raven. After that, you've got people like Frostbite, Axel, Mayhem, obviously, Sweet Tooth, who is not pleased at all with Stu. Actually, after arriving across the finish line, he throws Stu against the ice cream truck, scaring the crap out of him and threatening him for not listening to him. For John, however, he is just focused on Krista arriving safely. For Quiet, meanwhile, she's focused on Mayhem. As soon as she gets out of the car, she says, "What the hell was that back there?" Thinking that she might get a thank you from Mayhem, but Mayhem doesn't give it. She just tells Quiet, "I didn't ask for your help." And it's pretty clear that she is not grateful at all. That's when Calypso announces that everybody has arrived, and John says, "No, we're waiting for another driver." And a few seconds after saying that, Krista's ATV arrives without Krista on it. It's just her doll mask. At that point, John knows that Krista's dead. Everybody that has arrived safely gathers into a school bus and heads to where they'll be staying during the tournament. It's during the ride that Quiet tries to comfort John, but John is playing this Tommy Toughnuts act like he's not upset about what happened to his sister. Calypso then grabs the mic and gives a few announcements on the tournament. He explains that they will compete in multiple rounds, each more deadly than the next. If they survive, they advance, and the last driver behind the wheel gets their wish granted. The biggest rule, however, is no killing outside of an official round. If you do that, you're disqualified. It upsets a lot of people, but no one more than Sweet Tooth, who really, really wants to kill Mr. Grimm. These two have a past. They don't like each other. That is obvious. The group then arrives at where they'll be staying, and it's a local high school. They get their room assignments. They go through a physical, believe it or not. And after all that, Calypso tells them that they can work on their cars in between rounds and do upgrades as much as they want. They also have a cafeteria, they have bathrooms, like you name it, they've got it there. One person, though, that is upset about her room assignment is Raven. She wants her own room, and Calypso explains, "You're not getting it." He also reminds her that her entering the tournament was not part of the plan. She selected a driver, she lost that driver, and now she's here, and he's the one who has to deal with it. So these two had discussed who would be driving for New San Francisco before the tournament actually started. Raven, though, tries to act tough with Calypso, telling him that she's the leader of the most powerful city on the West Coast and she will get her wish granted no matter what it takes. But Calypso snaps her back to reality real quick. He shows his magical ability. His eyes go completely dark, and he reminds her, yeah, well, in here, you're in my city, which means that you're an outsider. And then he reminds her, don't mess with my tournament. Well, those two clearly were familiar with each other, so was Stu and Mike, and Stu hasn't let the relationship with Mike go just yet. It's pretty clear he's still jealous of Dave, so when he sees Mike and Dave hanging out and high-fiving each other, he tries to insert their history a little bit. He reminds them, hey, does this remind you of the school that we went to? But while trying to reminisce about the good old days, you've got Sweet Tooth reminding him about the reality of his situation. That Stu is not part of Mike's group anymore. That he's a part of Sweet Tooth's group. And that's a group that Mike doesn't want any part of. This is something, by the way, that has been noticed by Dave. The fact that Stu is trying to be buddy-buddy with Mike again, and he feels replaced. So when everybody heads to the cafeteria to enjoy a meal and grab some drinks, Dave goes up to Stu and says, look, man, I know what you're doing. It's pretty obvious. And you might think that Dave would be angry about this or maybe throw a threat, but he says, I love it, man. If you want to be a part of our group, no problem. And that's something that Stu has been kind of waiting to hear, because you can tell the relationship between him and Sweet Tooth is on the rocks, even though Sweet Tooth doesn't realize this. Stu is clearly rethinking his partnership. The problem is, how does Stu get out of the partnership with Sweet Tooth? Because Sweet Tooth is a psychopath. He hasn't really thought that part through yet. Meanwhile, you still have John sulking a little bit about what happened with Krista, and Quiet doing her best to remind him about the goal, about Krista's wish to have the walls taken down. She says, we got to win it for her. And John seems to be on board. And when they head to the cafeteria, everybody there is greeted by Calypso, who explains that he will call them one by one into another room where they will make that wish. It's pretty straightforward. And as soon as the first person goes into the room to make the wish, Sweet Tooth shows just how much of a psychopath he is by attacking Mr. Grimm. He's choking him out. And it's Stu who has to grab him and say, dude, you're going to get kicked out of this tournament. And then no one will know who you are. Is that what you want? And of course, that is not what Sweet Tooth wants at all. He wants the world to know that he is the most deadly killer out there. He reluctantly lets go of Mr. Grimm. He and Mr. Grimm throw threats back and forth at each other. But if they want to kill each other, they're going to have to do it in the tournament. As for the participants, though, one by one, they go into that room, they make their wish, and the last people to make their wish are Quiet and John. And when they head in, they're very surprised, because in this room, in the middle of a school, mind you, it's like they're in the middle of a forest with a wishing well and coins. Quiet goes over, she grabs a coin, she announces, I want all the walls taken down. And then she drops the coin into the well. Right after making the wish, an exit sign pops up, and both her and John start going towards it, but then John remembers, oh yeah, we forgot Krista's mask, because they brought it along with them. It's not like you need two people to grab a mask, so Quiet ends up going to the exit, and then John goes to grab the mask, but as he's looking at it, he's thinking about all the memories he had with his sister. It's not like there are a lot of them, but they all are rushing back. So right before he leaves, he grabs a coin, and he announces, "I wish for Krista to be brought back to life." And then he drops it in the well, and he heads for the exit. In episode 7, after making a wish and kind of lying to Quiet, John feels really bad about it. He's being eaten up by guilt. He actually confides in Axel, of all people, and Axel just makes fun of him. He can't believe that John is beating himself up over the fact that he lied to his girlfriend. But their conversation ends when Quiet ends up showing up. John is overly nice, overly excited. It's something that Quiet notices, but she can't figure out exactly why he's like this, and he just chalks it up to the excitement of the tournament. He's gone so far as to come up with a nickname for the team, Quan. You mix Quiet and John. Yeah, Quiet's not about it. I don't think anyone's about that. But everyone is working on their cars. That includes Mayhem, who is trying to work on hers, but because she's small and she's not as strong with her upper body, she can't lift guns. Quiet and John see her struggling, but they remind themselves she's on her own. We're not helping her. Most of the other competitors, though, start getting into a conversation about their wish that they made. Axel's not giving his wish. He feels like it's a birthday situation where if you say it, it doesn't come true. Whereas you've got Frostbite, who wishes to feel warm again. The Preacher Men want the end of the world and the rise of their baby preacher. Dave told the group that he didn't even care about a wish because he's already living the dream, so he let Mike do it, and while Mike was about to announce his wish, Vermin just jumped in and said, "My wish is for the bugs to rule the world." Chucky Floop wished for the ability to fly, and then it comes to John and Quiet. And Quiet tells the group, "My wish is for all the walls to come down," and that is surprising to everybody. They figured she might wish for one wall, but no, she wants all of them. And Raven, obviously the head of one of those cities, starts saying how dumb that is. They get into a back and forth about why it's not dumb, why the walls should come down, Raven defending the walls. And then Calypso shows up, and everybody shuts up. He announces that the first leg of the Twisted Metal tournament is going to involve 12 cars, but there's only 8 passes to get out of the playing field. They're hidden throughout the area, they'll be marked with red smoke, and if you try to leave without one, you're going to end up getting killed. There is one team, though, that is getting a sizable advantage from the competition, and that is Quiet and John because they finished last in the previous round. So in order to spice things up, he's giving them the advantage of a 1-minute head start and a device that shows them where all of the passes are located. For John, he thinks this will be cake. I mean, they're getting a 1-minute head start and they know where everything is located. Yeah, this is going to be pretty easy for him. I mean, after all, he is one of the best milkmen in the world. However, his whole mood changes when Quiet pulls out Krista's doll mask, and he can't unsee it. He can't stop staring at it. Not only the fact that he's reminded that his sister's no longer there, but he's reminded about the wish that he made behind Quiet's back. So when their minute actually starts, he is so flustered that he actually has to pull over at one point and tell Quiet, "You got to drive." And he doesn't do a really good job of explaining why she has to drive. But they're quickly wasting time. And it turns out that John is a better driver than a navigator. He's a really bad navigator. And that minute goes up pretty quickly. Next thing you know, they see red smoke in the sky and they realize our 1 minute is up and we don't have a pass. But they continue searching using that radar. As for the rest of the field, well, once the race actually started for them, they hightailed it looking for that red smoke. For Mayhem, she was chased down by Axel, who is all over her back. So for the moment, she stops thinking about the past and starts thinking about surviving. Eventually, though, her vehicle does end up crashing. Luckily for her, though, it crashes in a location where there's red smoke. So she knows all she has to do is walk into the warehouse and find it. But when she does, she finds out she's not the only one there. Chucky Floop is there. And he's already got the pass. And he's really only there because he wanted to get in some action with somebody else, and he's more than happy to get into it with Mayhem. These two haven't really gotten along since the tournament started. Mayhem tells him that she's leaving with that pass, and boy, does she. Because while they get in a hand-to-hand combat, it ends when Mayhem kicks him out of the warehouse and Chucky falls on top of her car and dies. But when that happens and Mayhem sees what she's done, she's spooked. Because Chucky was the first person she had ever killed. And she doesn't exactly handle it all that well. I mean, she's just absolutely shook by it. But now that she has a pass, she needs to get the hell out of there before somebody else does to her what she just did to Chucky. The issue is her car is now destroyed. The good news is she just steals Chucky's. She grabs his keys, she hops in, and it turns out that Chucky's car is kind of like Kit from Knight Rider. I mean, imagine driving around with an Alexa or a Siri, because that's what his car is. It's a Tesla on steroids. And at first, it's really annoying to Mayhem because she just wants to get out of there. But then she notices the advantages of having this car. The feature's name is Quattro, and its biggest advantage might be the fact that it gets Quiet out of there really, really fast without danger because it knows maps. And by the time they cross the finish line safely, Quiet has really, really warmed up to Quattro and this new vehicle. But crossing the finish line is a pipe dream right now for John and Quiet. The first place they headed was a warehouse that they thought would be off the beaten path. They thought that most of the competition wouldn't go to it, but they found out wrong. Because when they arrive at this warehouse, they find the pass, but it's in the middle of an ice rink. And they're not the only ones there. You've got the Preacher Men, you've got Sweet Tooth, and you've got Raven. And all four groups start trying to crawl on the ice to get to the pass. Initially, Quiet did grab it. She threw it to John, but John ended up slipping. He threw it to Sweet Tooth, and Sweet Tooth ends up getting that pass. As Sweet Tooth and Stu headed for their checkpoint exit, they were greeted by Mr. Grimm, who didn't have a pass. But thanks to the opening in Sweet Tooth's truck, he literally just hopped in with his bike and had them drive him over the finish line. So he ended up surviving. And boy, does that anger Sweet Tooth to no end. The next stop for Quiet and John, though, wasn't successful either. And now the passes are quickly dwindling. There's only one pass left, and when Quiet and John go to that warehouse, they find out that they are second to get there. The Preacher Men are first. This causes John and Quiet to go into desperation mode. John starts firing off shots as Quiet runs to grab the pass from the one Preacher Man who's holding it. Quiet and that preacher start getting into a fight. And John, wanting to put an end to it, goes to grab the boomerang missile, but he ends up getting it stolen from him. And the Preacher Men grab it and take off. As they're driving away, John and Quiet get in a roadkill. They drive after him, but the Preacher Men's car is just too fast for him. And the Preacher Men would easily be able to cross the finish line until one of them turns to the baby and says, "What do you want us to do?" And he says, "Kill them." And that changes everything. Because instead of going for the finish line, they start going for the kill. And the way they do that is using those boomerang missiles. But then they find out that they're holding boomerang missiles. They didn't know this at the time. They just stole it from John. And unfortunately, that missile ends up coming inches from killing Roadkill and John and Quiet and ends up flipping around, Uno reverse style, and crashing into them. A couple seconds later, John and Quiet come upon the wreckage. They're really just worried about the pass, and they are shocked to find that the baby is fine. The baby's actually holding the pass. And when John goes to grab the pass from the baby, he can't because it's like this baby has a Viking-like death grip on it. So they end up having to take the child with them and cross the finish line. They're the last group to do so. When everybody gets back to the garage and they start working on their cars, John and Quiet end up handing the baby over to Calypso. They can't take care of a kid, and Calypso, he seems like he's got it covered, and he seems like he's actually excited about the idea of taking care of a child. Before he leaves, though, he does warn them that they should enjoy this moment, but they better get their act together because things are only going to get harder. As he leaves, Mayhem comes over because she wants to talk to Quiet. She needs to confide in somebody about what happened with Chucky, about losing her kill virginity, if you will, and that's exactly how the conversation between Mayhem and Quiet goes down. You would think that Mayhem was talking about losing her virginity, when in reality she was talking about her first kill. But through talking with Quiet, Mayhem does feel better about the situation, because she needs to talk to somebody. And Quiet's been the closest thing to a friend she's had. After this conversation, though, Quiet ends up going into the room and finding John and filling John in on what was going on with Mayhem. But she can still tell that there's something going on with John, and she asks him point blank, "Is it me? Is it us? Like, what is up with you?" He tells her, "No, it's me. I mean, I'm really sorry for everything that happened today about being clumsy and messing everything up, but no, what's been bothering me is the fact that I lied to you. I made my own wish." And Quiet is dumbfounded. Quiet and John are on the outs in episode 8, as you can imagine. After the revelation that John made his own wish, Quiet loses it on him. They get into a big, big argument, and it results in both of them going their separate ways. And everybody in the school knows about it. At least they know that they were fighting. They don't exactly know why they were fighting. For Quiet, she's trying to burn off some steam by working out and working through that anger. And as she's doing so in the school gym, she's working out right next to Frostbite, who's on the treadmill. And they start talking about why exactly Quiet is so angry and what happened with John. As Quiet is lying to both Frostbite and herself that she doesn't care what John does anymore, Frostbite is attacked by a crash test dummy. I mean, it's like a human crash test dummy. And as Quiet is standing there in shock because she has no idea who this person is, there is an announcement over the PA system from Calypso. He's decided to invite some guests to the party. He considers this a bonus round and has invited his friends, the Apocalypse 9. They feel nothing, and they're really hard to kill. And the object for the 12 people that are there is to survive until dawn. If they're able to do that, then they move on to the next round. It's really that simple. But they're not going to be able to use their weapons. Now, everything in the garage is locked up. They're going to have to outsmart these people or just use pure on muscle. And for most people, that's okay, but for Axel, it's not. He runs over to the garage and he finds it locked, which is a problem because he needs his gasoline. He literally depends on it. So he's going to have to figure out exactly how he's going to survive without it for the time being. And surviving is on everybody's mind at the moment, especially Quiet, who is staring at one of these guys and finds it, really difficult to kill. He's able to trap her on the ground by putting a barbell over her neck, and then he goes off and he kills Frostbite, so she's out of the competition. And Quiet would have been killed if it weren't for Raven, who actually saves her life. This comes as a big surprise to Quiet, but Raven explains, I'll kill you in the next round. We got to deal with these guys. Because what Raven realizes is the less of them right now, the more of a chance they all die. So it's strength in numbers, and you might as well keep everybody alive and team up. And teaming up is what most of them have done. For Raven and Quiet, they eventually run into Vermin, who is able to take out one of the Apocalypse 9 on her own, but they can kind of tell that Vermin wants to hang out with them because they're the, quote, popular girls, and she never was. And since Quiet feels bad for her, okay, fine, you can tag along, and it's the three of them running off and trying to beat these guys or just stay alive. The girls, however, aren't the only ones to team up. Stu, Dave, and Mike are sequestered in a room, and they've put a bunch of items in front of the door. They've locked it. They think they're good until dawn, until Axel shows up and just bursts through the damn thing. Now, using his strength, he is able to relock the door, but he is terrified because he doesn't have his gas. He starts explaining this to the group, how he needs it. He needs it to survive. He needs it to be a killing machine. Without it, he's useless. And for Stu, he thinks this is a really easy fix. Just get into the garage. Get the guy his gas. He takes out everybody. Problem solved. But for Dave and Mike, they want to go a different route. Mike knows exactly what Dave's talking about. Dave's getting excited. Mike's getting excited. And that's when they mention that they're going to do an intervention. The four guys are going to sit down in a circle and they're going to talk about how to get over this fear of not having the gas. Stu's a little on the fence about whether or not this is the right approach. I mean, they can hear screaming outside of the door. They know that the Apocalypse 9 are coming. He thinks that they really should just go and get this guy gas, but Dave and Mike, they're adamant, no, this is the right way. And they start talking to Axel, talking about what he's gone through. And Axel explains that in the old life, he was a killing machine. I mean, legitimately, he was an assassin. He killed because he owed a bunch of guys money, and to whittle down that debt, well, he killed who they wanted him to. And one day, he got an order to kill a whole bunch of people. But what they didn't mention was there was a baby involved. And Axel wasn't about to kill any baby. So instead, he took the baby with him, and he fled. And for a while, life was good. He was raising this child as his own, and things were going according to plan until he was attacked. He fought valiantly, but they knocked him out. The last thing he remembers before going out was that baby crying, and when he woke up, the baby was gone. And Axel was devastated, because being with that baby on the road, those were some of the best days of his life. That's when he linked up with the doctor, and the doctor promised that he would get the baby back, but in reality, he just operated on Axel, creating a human guinea pig that now has wheels and relies on gasoline. The group then reminds Axel that he was murdering people before the gas. He doesn't actually need the gas. And to make Axel feel better, Dave tells him, I used to eat human flesh. I mean, that was gross, but you know what I did? I forgave myself, and I moved on. Axel, though, still isn't convinced until Stu actually pipes up and says, lean on us, man. We have faith in you. We know that you're a killing machine, and we know that you can kill anybody you want to. And that invigorates Axel. He stands up, and he starts to believe in himself, believe in the fact that he can be a murdering machine without the gas. And he goes out in that hallway, and he starts chasing down the Apocalypse 9. So while Stu, Mike, and Dave cheer on Axel, who is hunting these guys down, and Vermin, Raven, and Quiet are doing the same around the corner, you've also got John and Mayhem, who have linked up. And while trying to survive, Mayhem asks John what exactly happened between her and Quiet, and he tells her, we got into a big fight, and she told me she couldn't stand the sight of me, so I left. Mayhem says, so you took the easy way out? I mean, are you a bitch? And that pales in comparison to the conversation that Raven and Quiet had about what happened between Quiet and John. Raven does a really good job of playing devil's advocate, if you will. When Quiet says that John was selfish and he risked the mission, Raven reminds her, yeah, he risked your mission. I mean, is it really that selfish to want to bring his sister back? Look, do you have any idea how many times John tried to escape my city to get back to you? 15 times. I mean, the last time he tried to paraglide out using pizza boxes. He's not the smartest guy in the world. He doesn't think things through. Even Vermin gets into the conversation. I mean, it's a bit of a rocky tale, her and a guy from camp and some crap, but it does seem to get through to Quiet. To the point where when everybody eventually links up in the cafeteria, all the groups, and everybody kind of just sits back and watches Axel kill all of the Anarchy people, Quiet and John are in a much better headspace. And you might have noticed that there's two people that I haven't mentioned because they didn't participate in this. Mr. Grimm was actually locked outside. He had gone fishing, and he couldn't get into the building. Whereas Sweet Tooth, he had a doctor's appointment where he found out that he was sterile. So he was in the school nurse's office, and when he came back, he decided to tell Stu, I'm adopting you, which is really exciting for Stu. I mean, who wouldn't want to be adopted by Sweet Tooth? There's then an announcement over the loudspeaker that the Apocalypse 9 have been defeated, and everybody that survived is moving on to the next round. When Quiet and John get back to the room, both of them apologize to each other for what they both did. They both now seem to understand the other side's feelings towards the matter, and for John, he's willing to take his wish back. He knows that the most important thing would be to take down the walls and that that's what Krista would want. But when he goes to rectify his wrong and he opens the door, he sees the well, but there are no coins to actually make a wish with. In episode 9, John and Quiet walk into the room with the wishing well, and they're pretty confused because they don't exactly know how they're going to take back John's wish without any coins. That's when Calypso shows up out of nowhere. He asks what exactly they want and what they're doing, and they explain, well, we kind of screwed up a little bit. John takes all the ownership. He claims that he made his wish on his own without Quiet's knowledge, and he needs to take it back. But Calypso wants to make sure that John understands what he's doing. So he asks him, are you sure you want to take your wish back? I mean, it is your sister. And then he turns to Quiet and says, and you want to make him take his wish back? I mean, it is his sister. But they both agree, yeah, no, we want to take it back because taking down the walls is the most important thing. And it turns out that taking the wish back is a pretty simple procedure. Calypso tells him, yeah, just drink from the well. That's it. Just drink and you guys will be good. And maybe one of the reasons why Calypso rushed this thing is because he's getting ready that night for a party. He has a fancy name for it, the Summer Solstice Winter Festival, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, what it is, it's prom. He sends all the contestants the proper attire, whether it be suits or dresses, and he invites them to the gymnasium later that day. And for most of them, getting into a dress or a suit, it's a first-time affair. And they all are pretty confused on what exactly they're there to do. For some of them, they look goofy as hell. I mean, you've got Dave and Mike dressed up like Dumb and Dumber. But by far, the best dressed of the night is Quiet. I mean, she looks hot as hell, and John tells her as much. But Quiet is going through this whole situation, watching her back the entire time. She doesn't trust whatever Calypso has in store for them. Everybody, though, sheepishly walks into the gym, and that's when they find Calypso in front of a tree. He welcomes them to the Solstice Festival. He even hints at the fact that he was at Roanoke, Virginia, the famous missing colony. But before they get the festivities underway, they need to make a sacrifice of life in honor of those that died before them. And that sacrifice is going to be blood on the tree. It starts out with Calypso. He cuts his hand open, and he puts that bloody palm on the tree, and then one by one, everybody does it. Whether they want to or not, they step forward, Calypso cuts their hand, and then they place that hand on the tree. And after everyone's done it, Calypso seems to clean his hand with one of the leaves, and all of a sudden, everybody's cut is gone, showing the magic of Calypso. He then lights a match on fire, drops it at the base of the tree, and announces that tonight is for the living, and the tree goes up in flames. But it kicks off the party, and it is a hell of a celebration. They have a DJ playing all the hits, including Crazy Town's Butterfly. What an all-time banger. Now, this is a pretty typical prom. You've got somebody spiking the drinks. That is Raven. You've got the guy that's dancing like no one's watching. That's Sweet Tooth. You've even got a photo booth that Stu, Mike, and Dave can't wait to partake in. For John, though, he's most excited about the spread because they have Rice Krispie treats, but Quiet walks over and knocks it out of his hand and says, "What are you doing?" I mean, it's pretty clear that Calypso has something planned tonight. I just know it. I can feel it. Something's not right here. But John, he's willing to just throw that aside because, well, he's never had Rice Krispie treats, and they're pretty friggin' awesome. So he tells Quiet, look, if you want to go and search the perimeter for problems, by all means, go ahead. And while she does that, the dance goes on, and people try to find love. Axel starts out trying to find it with Raven, only to find out that Raven is a lesbian. So, yeah, it's not happening there. Now, the only new couple to come out of that night is actually Mr. Grimm and Vermin. Yeah, they end up hooking up. And by hooking up, I mean like they hook up. They start out under the dance floor, and then they make their way under the bleachers, where Vermin is taking him to town, all of his souls. But Sweet Tooth sees this as an opportunity. As Vermin is taking Mr. Grimm's motorcycle for a ride, if you will, Sweet Tooth pops out of nowhere and says, Grimm, you won the bet. And even though there is no bet, the fact that there was a bet that was implied that one of them could sleep with Vermin pisses her off so much that she gets up and leaves. And Mr. Grimm is left there with a tight stick shift, if you will, pissed off at his nemesis for ruining any chance he had at winning the night. There's a lot of euphemisms here. If you want to hit thumbs down, I get it. Now, out on the dance floor, the three amigos, Dave, Mike, and Stu, are having a great time until Stu comes over and he says, hey, do you guys want to try these chicken fingers? Now, Dave, remember, I said chicken fingers, not human fingers. And even though Stu is making a joke, that joke really hits home for Dave, who is a reformed cannibal. He gets so upset that he just walks away, and Mike turns to Stu, dumbfounded, and says, Stu, you can't say stuff like that to a guy in recovery. And Stu genuinely feels bad about what he said, so much so that he wants to go and find Dave and apologize, and Mike says, you know what, I think he'd really like that. He's probably meditating in his room or something. But no, when Stu goes and tracks down Dave is in the locker room, chomping on human body parts that were left off from the competition. He's not reformed anymore. He's relapsed. And relapsed Dave is a lot less cool than reformed Dave. Stu tries to talk him down, but Dave is just seeing red in a lot of different ways. And all of a sudden, Stu is looking pretty delicious, so he attacks Stu. And for a while, it looks like he's just going to start eating Stu. But Stu is able to push himself off. He starts to defend himself. And eventually, Dave lunges at Stu. Stu moves out of the way, and Dave lands on a coat hook, which kills him. Now, this is going to look really messy for Stu. You can't just walk out of there, find Mike, and say, oh, by the way, yeah, your bestie, he's dead now. It's going to look like Stu did it. So he grabs a piece of paper and a pen, and he writes a suicide note, making it look like it was Dave's idea the entire time. And when he walks out of that room, and he does eventually find Mike back on the dance floor, he says, oh yeah, I found him, but he said he has some personal demons he needs to attend to. And he just left it at that. Well, this has sort of ruined Stu's night. John has simply tried to get Quiet to have a good night, let her guard down a little bit because she's so on edge, waiting for something to happen. After searching the perimeter and finding nothing, she eventually returns to John, and it seems like she starts to let her guard down a little bit because her, John, and Mayhem head to the photo booth. Now, when they do this, they're right after Axel, who is admiring his pictures. But then as Mayhem is entering the photo booth, he notices something. She bends over to tie her hair, and he recognizes the hair tie. He asks her, "Where'd you get that from?" And she says, "I don't know, I've had it ever since I was a baby." And that's when it clicks with Axel, that Mayhem is the baby that he rescued and lost, because that hair tie matches the blanket that he would wrap her in. And all of a sudden, his mood around Mayhem has completely changed because he found her again. But he doesn't tell her any of this. No, he just lets her go into the photo booth with John and Quiet and have fun. The prom, though, rages on. The bangers continue. The highlight, by far, is Juvenile's "Back That Ass Up." I'm telling you right now, I got hype in my apartment watching that scene because my hips are weapons when that song comes on. But eventually, you need to change the mood a little bit. You need to do the slow stuff. And that's when John eventually gets Quiet to join him on the dance floor for a slow dance. It's romantic. Everything seems to be going great. But there's one person who orchestrated all of this, and that is Calypso, who is watching from the rafters, and he's got something in store. Because Quiet wasn't wrong about her feeling. All of a sudden, the gym starts filling up with smoke, and people start coughing. This is when Mr. Grimm actually gets his revenge on Sweet Tooth by burning Harold, Sweet Tooth's best friend / paper bag. This is before the smoke really engulfs everybody, and one by one, they all start dropping. When Sweet Tooth and John wake up, along with, you'd assume, the other competitors, they're in their vehicles. Although John and Quiet are in separate vehicles. And that's when Calypso comes over the radio and announces that they're about to partake in the after party. It's the next competition, and they better get ready for it. In episode 10, Quiet and John, who were able to communicate between each other through the CP radio in the cars, realize that they're both in identical roadkills. Although they're not exactly sure what they're going to do, and that's when Calypso gives the rules. Everybody is given one name of a competitor that has to die. And if they're able to eliminate the competition, well, then they move on. Mayhem has Raven. Raven has Vermin. Vermin has John. John has Axel, which he's really concerned about. And as for Axel, he's scared to open up his card because he doesn't want it to be Mayhem, now that he knows exactly who Mayhem is. But when he opens it up, he finds out that his target is Quiet. And he's not the only one who's hesitant to open the card because they don't want it to be Mayhem. Quiet is the same exact way, although unfortunately, her card does say Mayhem, and she's not exactly sure what she's going to do. For the time being, she's going to drive around and try to evade being killed while also trying to figure out how she's going to advance in the tournament. Now, this tournament field is way different. There's like these electricity conductors all over the place that are making it really tough for some of the drivers. Right after the competition does start, John and Quiet get together, and they both tell each other who their target is. John saying, "Well, my target's Axel," and Quiet saying, "John, my target's the kid, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do." But they vow to figure it out together. In order to do that, though, they're going to have to find each other on the battlefield and team up, but that's going to be pretty tough because Vermin has found John, and she's all over him. John is able to fight back, but the thing that really gets Vermin off his tail is Raven. Because this whole electromagnetic field that they're in is perfect for her car. She has a conductor, which makes her car very, very, very powerful. And when she gets Vermin in her sights, she destroys Vermin. This would, in theory, allow her to exit the competition and just move on. But when she's instructed to do so, she says, "No, you know what? I'm going to stick around." Because at this point, she wants to eliminate as many people as possible. Now, you may have noticed that I neglected a few of the names in the competition that aren't there because they're going through a little bit of a trial. Those names are Mike, Stu, Mr. Grimm, and Sweet Tooth, and we'll get to them later, but they're not involved in this round. Now, back at the competition, Quiet and John have been able to link up, and they're doing a really good job of evading those that are trying to kill them, mainly being Axel. But unfortunately for Quiet, the moment comes where she has to decide what she's going to do because Mayhem is in her sights. And not only is Mayhem in her sights, but this electromagnetic field, while it worked really well for Raven, it takes out Quattro, Mayhem's biggest weapon in her car. It's on the fritz, and she doesn't really know how to fix it in the moment, so she's kind of just immobilized. I mean, she's driving around, but she doesn't really have the powerful weapons that she once did. What I'm trying to say is Mayhem is a sitting duck for Quiet. Turns out Quiet didn't even need to make that decision, though. Because as Quiet and John were riding side by side and Quiet had her finger on the trigger, both of them heard a voice from behind them say, "Goodbye, John," and it was Raven. Using her car's power, she blasted an electric beam that both Quiet and John were able to avoid, but Mayhem ended up being the primary target. The beam pushed Mayhem's car right into a pole, and there was an announcement made that Mayhem had been eliminated. Right away, both John and Quiet stopped the car and they ran to go check on Mayhem, who is in rough shape. She's knocked out, but she's alive. They pull her out of the car, they're looking at her, they're tending to her, and John tells Quiet, "You get back in the car, I'll stay with her, because if you die, everything we've done is for nothing." But before they can react, Raven has turned the car around and is heading right at them. And both John and Quiet, they would have been dead if it wasn't for Axel, who had seen what happened from afar, and he wasn't about to lose Mayhem again. Not after finally finding her. So what he did is he rolled his vehicle in front of the beam, and he essentially sacrificed himself. And when he did that, 3 competitors were eliminated from the game, and 3 competitors were able to move on. Those 3 being John, Quiet, and Raven. Now, where were the other competitors? Stu, Mike, Mr. Grimm, and Sweet Tooth? Well, they were at a sort of Calypso court, if you will. Because Dave's body was found under suspicious circumstances. Killing an opponent is obviously against the rules of Calypso's game, so he wanted to get to the bottom of it. And the way that he saw it was that Stu was a cannibal who was eating Dave and then decided to kill him and write this suicide note and make it look like it was Dave's idea the entire time. Initially, when the body is rolled out, Stu says, "Oh man, that's crazy, what a shame," but when he's confronted about the fact that he might be the cannibal, he vehemently denies it. And at first, it seems like Calypso doesn't believe him because his teeth marks match up with the bite that is on Dave's body, but he continues to plead his case. He looks at his friends like Mike and Sweet Tooth and says, "You guys know that I'm not a cannibal." And eventually, everybody buys the fact that Dave was actually the cannibal, and he simply died by sheer accident, and in order to shield Mike from the news that his friend had relapsed, the suicide note was written. As for Sweet Tooth and Mr. Grimm, the reason that they're there is because Mr. Grimm violated the rules by burning Harold. Yeah, that's right, the paper bag. Eventually, the conclusion is that he won't be eliminated from the game, but since Mr. Grimm took something from Sweet Tooth, Calypso takes something from Mr. Grimm, and that is all of his souls. Now he's just one man, one soul, one body, that's it. Everybody then heads back to the school where Mayhem is on the mend. Right before she eventually comes to, she was reflecting on her wish, which was to just find a place where she belongs. And when she wakes up, she may have found it because there's Quiet and there's John sleeping, but they're with her to make sure that she would pull through. They let her know what happened, and especially the fact that none of them would be there without Axel. To which Mayhem says, "I always liked him. I got like a good vibe from him." They also have to let her know that she's not in the tournament anymore, which she figured, but she says, "I'll just ride with one of you guys." And John tells her, "Maybe you should worry about just getting better first." Mayhem isn't the only one that wants to ride with somebody else. After going through that Calypso court, Stu has to break the news to Sweet Tooth that he wants to ride with Mike. And at first, Sweet Tooth doesn't take it well, but when Stu tells him, "Look, Mike is my herald," Sweet Tooth understands. Although he does tell him, "I will tear you guys up." And he's not joking. So the next round, Mike and Stu will be teamed up, but what is the next round? Well, Quiet actually gets a hint at what it might be. Because as she's sitting in her hospital bed, she hears a noise outside, and she sees Calypso creeping around the hallways, and then she notices him go into a secret passage via the lockers, and she decides, you know what, I'm going to follow him. She follows him all the way down to a layer, basically, where he's got a bunch of computers hooked up, and there's something that is hooked up to those computers that he is going to unveil the next round, and he is real proud of it. He actually speaks to it saying, they're never going to see you coming. And for Quiet, her first thought is, well, I got to inform my team, being Quiet and John. But when she goes to do that, she's outside in the hallway, and she overhears a conversation between Quiet and John, and they're not about to let her on the team. They're just worried for her. She seems to be a liability, and they're worried that she will end up dying. But she doesn't see it like that. She just hears the liability part. And the fact is, she hasn't been a liability, so they're really just worried because she's young. Either way, though, she takes it personally, and instead of letting them know about this Terminator in the basement that's going to be unveiled at the tournament, she packs up her stuff, and she leaves with Quattro. Unfortunately for Mayhem, she didn't get very far, and in episode 11, she's caught pretty quickly by Calypso's men and brought back to Calypso. He starts playfully asking, why are you leaving us? I mean, don't you want to see your friends in the final round? But she emphatically says, those aren't my friends. Because after what she overheard, she feels like her, Quiet, and John aren't friends. She tells Calypso, I just want to get out of here. And he says, yeah, unfortunately, you saw something you weren't supposed to see, so we can't let you go. And even after Quiet says, look, I'm not going to tell anybody, he can't take the chance. She is to be his guest at the final competition. And it's not like she has a choice in the matter. After she agrees, Calypso goes over to the PA and announces to everybody that he has a special treat for him. It is an omelet station, and it is a treat. It's such a welcome sight that even Mr. Grimm and Sweet Tooth sort of put their differences aside when they get that fluffy, eggy goodness. Don't get it twisted, though. They still want to kill each other really, really badly, and they both vow to do so in the next round. Two people, though, that skipped the omelet station were Quiet and John. They were busy having sex. But after the post-nut clarity, Quiet says, I got to go check on the kid. And as they both walk to do so, neither of them actually wants to be the one to tell her, yeah, kid, we're not taking you with us. Eventually, though, that responsibility is going to lay on John, but he doesn't have to do it, because when they get to Quiet's room, they find that she is gone. Before they can talk about where exactly she might have gone, somebody sneaks up behind them and puts a bag over their head and kidnaps them. And they did this to all the competitors. They load them up into a school bus, they take them to the next arena, and when the group gets out there, after collecting their bearings, they start looking around and realize exactly where they are. It's not a normal arena. I mean, it is in the sense of one that we know, but there are spectators, tons of them, and they are going nuts for the competitors that are still left. I mean, some of these people like Sweet Tooth even have a fan section that are cheering their name, and for some of them, like Sweet Tooth, it is really exhilarating. For others, like John, he finds this whole situation messed up because now they're realizing that this whole competition has been broadcast for the public. They didn't realize it, but they were the world's entertainment. And now, the final round and most of their deaths will be the exact same. Entertainment. After watching a few of their highlights throughout the tournament, Calypso then welcomes everybody and starts going through a spiel about how outsiders and insiders are now coming together to watch this event. But as he's rambling on, that's when John and Quiet notice that by his side is Mayhem. But now we need to get on the competition. All of the competitors are lined up. They're waiting for the mark to go and run as fast as they can to their cars and then try to kill each other. A few seconds later, they hear that signal, they all race over, and Mayhem, Calypso, everybody in attendance watch as these people just try to eviscerate one another. Pretty early on in the competition, it looks like Quiet and John, who, by the way, are in matching roadkills, it looks like they're on the run a little bit. And Calypso turns to Mayhem and says, yeah, it looks like your friends could use some help. But she corrects him and says, I don't have any friends. And that's actually music to his ears. He starts saying, I thought they made you soft, but no, that's good. You don't need friends in this world. And the more he talks about the fact that you don't need friends, it's making her realize they are her friends, and she does need friends. Either way, John and Quiet are able to turn the tables, link up, and they're the ones that actually eliminate the first car. It's Stu and Mike. Mike was driving, and while they thought they had John on the run, he moved out of the way to reveal that Quiet was firing bullets into their car, and Mike got hit, the car crashed. Stu was really broken up about it, but that's one car out of the way. It looks like there'll be another car eliminated pretty soon because Raven is on the run from Sweet Tooth, but when he goes to fire a missile at her, a missile that would surely blow up her car, it's revealed that she's using some cheat codes. She put something in her car that had a force field, so that rocket did nothing to her car. And Raven, who at this point is indestructible, drops a bomb that explodes right under Sweet Tooth's truck and flips it on its side, so now he's eliminated. But that force field really pisses off Calypso. It's ruining the integrity of the game. So using his magical ability, he gets rid of it pretty quickly. Now Raven is on even playing field with all of the rest of her competitors. Even though Raven is really pissed off about this, she gets her head back in the competition, and she thinks she has John cornered at one point, only to realize she doesn't. John fires one of those boomerang missiles, and because Raven is just flat-footed, that missile comes back and explodes. It ruins her car, and she's in really rough shape as she crawls out of it. She's in such rough shape that when she does crawl out, she sees a vision of her girlfriend as a teenager. And she looks up, but, then she just dies. The next competitor to go is Mr. Grimm. John and Quiet, using their tag team abilities, are able to knock him off the bike, and then it's Sweet Tooth who finishes him off. Now, yeah, Sweet Tooth's truck is destroyed, essentially, because it's on its side, but Sweet Tooth was alive. And as he watched Mr. Grimm run from these two, when he saw him fall off his bike, he went in for the kill. Initially, him and Mr. Grimm get into a fight just on their feet, but Sweet Tooth is really big. He finally picks Mr. Grimm up, and he throws him, and he does so at an angle where his head ricochets off of a moving roadkill. And then he's just completely crushed by the other one. So Mr. Grimm, he's dead. With just John and Quiet remaining, Calypso gets up and announces that he's going to insert a little bit of a twist, a final boss. This is what he was referring to down in the basement of the school when he said they're never going to see you coming. Because he has his men drop off a robot/monster. It's hard to describe, but this thing is no joke. And Quiet and John have no idea how they're going to defeat it. They get a look, though, at just how powerful this thing is because Sweet Tooth tries to attack it, and he gets the piss beaten out of him. Sweet Tooth is really tough, but he's no match for this thing. While Sweet Tooth wipes the floor with just about everybody he encounters, this thing, which is named Minion, wipes the floor with him. I mean, it kicks him, and Sweet Tooth flies across the arena and slams into a container, knocking him out and putting everybody on notice of just how powerful Minion is. And now John and Quiet are pretty concerned. But they need to figure out what exactly its weakness is. What they realize is this thing isn't the quickest at turning around, so if they just keep circling it, they'll be able to find that weakness, and they do. It's in his back. They start firing and firing and firing, but eventually Quiet fires a missile right at its back, but it turns at the last second and just grabs it out of the air. Minion, holding onto the missile, goes to throw it back in Quiet's direction, but John is not willing to let that happen. He throws his roadkill in the way of the missile, and John's vehicle goes up in a ball of fire. John is thrown out of it and knocked out. Quiet and Mayhem are really concerned for John, Mayhem not really being able to do anything about the situation because she's standing next to Calypso, but Quiet is. She decides to take out Minion kamikaze style. She runs full blast into him and then tucks and rolls out of her vehicle. Her roadkill goes up in a ball of fire, but so does Minion. At least you think, you hope. Theoretically, this would end the competition, but it doesn't, because there was actually one vehicle still remaining that was operational, and it was Stu and Mike's. While Mike was the driver and his vehicle did crash, it was still drivable. So a very oblivious Stu rolls out into the arena, only to find out he's actually the winner. But as he's celebrating his victory, as is everybody else, Quiet rushes over to John to make sure that he's okay and he's not doing great. Meanwhile, as Calypso announces that Stu is the winner, he will get his wish, Mayhem has seen enough. She kills one of his guards, she grabs his gun, she points it at Calypso and she says, "I'm leaving now." And he laughs and says, "It's not going to matter in a moment anyway." And then a bomb goes off in the stands, killing all of the spectators. With the carnage all over the place, Quiet is still just concerned about John. She hasn't left his side. And it looks like he's going to die until Mayhem rolls up in Sweet Tooth's vehicle. That's because before getting his ass kicked by Minion, Sweet Tooth was able to flip his ice cream truck, but he wasn't able to get into it. Mayhem, however, is a little bit smarter than him. So she jerry-rigs it, hot wires it, gets in, and rolls up on John and Quiet and immediately starts apologizing. But it's not time for apologies. They have to hotwire John now. They hook up jumper cables to the ice cream truck, and then they hook him up to John, and essentially they jumpstart his heart. And it works. He wakes up. Once they get far away from the arena that they can kind of just relax a bit, Quiet has to tell John that they lost the competition. Stu was the winner. He's really surprised, but then Mayhem, who's driving the ice cream truck, says, "Guys, we don't have unlimited gas. Where exactly am I going?" And John pulls out that map that Krista drew when they were kids of his grandparents' cabin, and he says, "Here, just drive north and follow this." And believe it or not, Mayhem understands that map completely. Not too long later, all three of them arrive at the cabin, and while it's locked, they are able to get in. And not only are they able to get in, but after walking around a little bit, they realize that there's power in the cabin. None of them know what solar energy is, but I guess John's grandfather hooked up some solar panels, and because of it, they're all better off right now. For them, this truly is like Shangri-La, somewhere where they can relax, not have to worry about getting killed in vehicles, and just live out their days. All three of them are very comfortable. Not too long after arriving, though, John does end up finding the room that he and Krista would have shared as kids. It's pretty obvious that it would be their room, and John gets pretty emotional walking around it. He even finds that missing edition of the Babysitters Club, so now he's going to be able to find out all that missing info that he just needed to know. It's also sinking in for John that they didn't accomplish Krista's goal of taking down the walls. And as John and Quiet lie in his childhood bed, Quiet takes a lot of the responsibility for it. But she also says, it's time we do something for us. We're comfortable here. Let's just build roots. And that's what they do. The three of them clean up the cabin. They go fishing for food, kind of. I mean, John tries to fish, but Quiet and Mayhem would rather just shoot bullets into the pond, and that actually works better. But one night, as they're all three laughing over dinner, the TV turns on, and it's Calypso. He announces that what happened at his tournament with the bomb going off and all those innocent lives being taken, the megacities have formed an alliance. They want to extract vengeance for the people that were lost, because after all, insiders were there, and the blame is being heaped on John Doe and Quiet. They have video of them making their wish that all the walls being taken down, but more importantly, they have AI footage of John Doe and Quiet planting a bomb. Now, obviously, John Doe and Quiet didn't plant this bomb, but tell the public that. The leader of this mega city coalition announces that now the cities are done hiding. They're coming out, and they're going to search for John and Quiet and bring justice to both of them. But it's not just them. They want all of the outsiders gone. Because once all the outsiders are gone, there won't be a need for walls. The final message is, if you deliver John and Quiet to us, you'll be celebrated as a hero, but if you support them, you're a hostile, you're in our way, you will be crushed. Right after the transmission goes off air, their door is kicked in, and it's Minion. They're not sure how exactly Minion found them, but now they're fighting for their lives because this thing is, as I said, a stone-cold killing machine. They all try in separate ways to just get it off their back. But Minion corners John in a room, starts choking him, and John just instinctively grabs for the helmet, tears it off, only to reveal that Minion is actually Krista's reanimated body. He tries to get through to Krista, saying, "Krista, it's me, it's your brother," but it's pretty clear that who's ever in that body is no longer Krista, and he has to fight her off. She's too powerful, though. She pins him down, starts repeatedly punching him in the face, and she would kill him if it wasn't for the fact that John starts whistling a song that she remembers from her childhood, and something in that gets her to stop for a second. She's then shot in the back by a sniper. Somebody's outside. This frees up John with just enough time to get out of that room, grab Quiet and Mayhem, and say, "We got to get out of here." But Chris is not down. She gets back up, and within a few seconds, she's back in the room confronting all three of them. And that's when you find out who the sharpshooter was. It was Stu. Now, what happened to Stu this entire time? Well, after winning Twisted Metal, he was granted his wish. His wish was simple. He wanted to go to someplace safe with Mike. And Calypso honored that, by putting Stu in a space station with a dead Mike. Wasn't exactly something Stu was banking on. And after a few months, he decided, you know what? I got to get back home. He learned how to control the space station. He crashed into one of the lakes, and he was able to find the cabin because John didn't shut up about it back at the school. So it wasn't hard to locate. With all that time up in space, Stu did a lot of work on himself, becoming a much more in-shape, fit killing machine a little bit. I mean, not to the point of Minion, but a far cry from what he was. But still, all four of them are going to be no match for Minion. However, they are smarter than Minion. And when Minion goes to load up a weapon to kill Stu, John plunges a hatchet right into her back, right into that weak spot, and it cripples her. He doesn't really want to, but he has to. He leaves her. All four of them get into the ice cream truck, and they get on the road. When they get far enough from the cabin, they stop the vehicle at a crossroads, and they start talking about what they're going to do. For Stu, he wants everybody to join the fight. For Mayhem, she says, no, that's ridiculous. And John knows that they can't run. There's nowhere safe to go. They have a target on their back. So he's not running. No, he has a plan. And that plan is to kill Calypso. He's going to cut off the head of the snake. But in order to do that, they're going to need some vehicles. Now, they already have one. They have Sweet Tooth's truck. But what happened to Sweet Tooth after he got his ass beat by Minion? Well, he wasn't dead. No, somebody rolled into the arena in a old-school taxi cab, hooked him up, and started dragging him back to New York. When he eventually came to, he hopped up, and he wanted to go after this guy until he told him, I had strict orders from your dad to bring you back. He's been real impressed with what's happened to his legacy. And to that, Sweet Tooth gets all excited because he's missed his dad. But we also get background on Calypso in this episode. Calypso wasn't lying when he talked about Roanoke. He crawled out of a well there, but he's been alive ever since. And back in the late 90s, he pitched the idea of Twisted Metal to a bunch of TV networks as just a demolition derby competition, but they all laughed it off. They all passed on it. So Twisted Metal has really been the brainchild of Calypso and the dream of Calypso for a long, long time. And that is the end of Season 2 of Twisted Metal. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If I got something wrong, shit happens. I don't write a script for these. I'm just going off the top of my head. So just keep it moving. Keep nasty comments to a minimum. I'm a person. They make me feel bad. I have merch. Go buy a shirt. Go buy a mug or something, you know? Help me above the poverty line. But if you don't do that, it's okay. Just know that I do appreciate you just getting this far.